This is the major philosophical issue raised by atheists and debaters. How can the world be created by a merciful God when all of these evils exist in it? A shattered human soul, destructive wars, famine and poverty, displacement and refugees, unending injustice, and endless personal suffering. How long will all this last? And why is it happening to start with? And if the world was led by a wise God, then why is there all this evil? If God rules this world, then why doesn't he destroy evil? Why is life correlated with tragic agony? And what is the purpose behind all of that? False promises. Evil is a philosophical problem as old as time. However, it has not gained its presence in the collective consciousness until the modern times, specifically following the promises of the European modernity. These promises to eradicate evils from this land. At that time, man aspired to the earthly paradise in which there is no evil, since science would eradicate famine, wars, pestilence, and all evils. As for the future, it carried peace, sophistication, and eternal love for mankind. And people would discard their internal pain once they experienced more pleasure and fun. The earthly paradise was one of the prophecies of modernity. Yet, in the span of a few years, those dreams would be completely dissipated and replaced by nightmares of evil. That humanity has never witnessed anything like them before. 2 world wars, millions of corpses, military occupations, human slaughter, and a great economic depression. In addition to millions of deadly epidemics and diseases that humanity has not known before. As for the psychological pain and futility, they have become the frightening ghost haunting humanity, and the dreams of an earthly paradise have been dispelled. A torn human being. Promises were broken then, and man fell into a crisis, with which existential questions rolled in. Nihilism, which does not see in life any intelligible purpose or significance, has proliferated. The modern man is a man of instant pleasure, and pain for him is an unwelcome guest. For pain is like a tumor that must be excised in order for the pleasure of life to continue. There is no meaning to life for the modern man, except at the disappearance of pain. There is no purpose for existence in the shadow of suffering, for that life was created for pleasure, not for suffering. But let us now imagine that we are in an earthly paradise, if we are ever there, where the paradise is. There would be no meaning to suffering, and no meaning to life's ups and downs. No meaning to the simplicity and contraction of the soul. Paradise means that a person has no will, because the human will requires his ability to do good and bad simultaneously. As for paradise, it means that it is purely good and there is no evil in it. It is then that life becomes meaningless. There would be no meaning to life or afterlife. Matters are defined by their opposites. Do fish feel wet? So C.S. Lewis wonders on why we feel evil. If light were absent or the eyes of the beings were obscured, the word darkness would be meaningless. And when we call a line crooked, we are necessarily aware of what a straight line is like, as Lewis carries on. And so, if life is meaningless, then why does man react so violently to its evils? Or in other words, if the world were an unfair place, then where did the idea of justice come from? And if the idea of justice was a mere illusion, then why do we object to the existence of evil? And so we wonder, are not meanings such as injustice, murder, racism, and blackmail all crimes? And charity, mercy, and tolerance good deeds? So if all these actions are judged ethically, and moral judgments needed a constant source, a source by which we distinguish good from evil and right from wrong, where does this source come from then? Is there an explanation besides the fact that God has created these meanings in us from the beginning? He who does not have God in their heart shall never feel his absence, as Simone Weil puts it. In praise of pain. If God exists, then why is there pain? That visitor that we deplore with utmost sensitivity. But is it possible that we wronged pain with such denial? Could there be no actual good behind this suffering around us? Paul Brand, an English physician, spent his life with lepers. Those who lack the sense of pain, so their lives are distorted. In his book, Pain, the Gift Nobody Wants, Brand tells us about the necessity of suffering for humans, that is, for us. Pain preserves man from threats that may hinder his soul, and only when feeling pain can a person escape from the danger. Through pain, a person learns to think twice before stepping into hell. And it is with the effect of pain and memory that a person moves towards matters. That is, pain is a person's instrument to achieve a safe life in this world. So, tell the tales of lepers. If Brad could gift his patients anything, it would be the feeling of pain. Because medical engineering cannot create a complex system that protects humans as well as their nervous system. So, if this is what the body needs, what about what the soul needs? The missing brick. Can we imagine a world without evil? Or even a world with illusory evil that does us no harm? Daniel Snyder did beat us to this question. And his answer was that in such a world, we would not find an outlet for good, for nobody needs the help we would give them, and no one can arouse our sympathy. No pardon since there is no mistake, and no giving because there is no loss. In such a world, we will not glorify a person who pursues a noble goal, and nobody will give money, time, or talent to those in need. It is a narrow world, devoid of any real connection with the other. This is then how suffering shapes us, as life is meaningless without suffering. And self-making cannot exist in an inert reality without influence or options. A world without evil is a world in which there is no distinction. There'd be no good or bad guys. The good would not be rewarded and the bad would not be punished. So how does all this align with the wisdom of God who tests his servants with the unknown? And where's justice in this life then? Such a completely virtuous world would have more injustice than the human injustice in our present world, because it would blur the difference between the fleeting moments and the long eternity. Nietzsche says, "He who has the why can live with any how." Because when the goal is clear, the hurdles on the way will be less significant. Thus, there is wisdom behind this deficiency. Awareness of these meanings tells us that pain's existence alongside life is complementary to the matter of divinity. Piety is what sets people apart, and how they react when calamity befalls them. Or as William Law puts it, we deduce that the logical form of the issue of evil is not a significant problem for theology. And once we understand this, we understand the purpose of this life. So we strive to what is beyond this purpose. For meaning stems from a world besides this palpable one. The feeling of insufficiency is the secret behind the aspiration for perfection. And it is this aspiration that leads us to acknowledge the existence of the all-wise, all-knowing God. But when God is asked to eradicate evil from earth, it is as if he is asked to prevent man from freedom and will. As freedom of will necessarily means that a person is able to do both good and evil. It is then that we will miss the wisdom behind what we witness of human tragedies or natural disasters, because we denied suffering despite its presence in the aspects of our lives. And if people had only one state of worship, then the judgment, verses, lessons, and purposes would be lost. So would the perfection of God's kingdom, and the disposition that is for God only. Hence, understanding the purpose of life explains the answer to why